Good morning. Today is Wednesday of the 29th week in Ordinary Time, and as we all are experiencing, we are rapidly coming to the end of this year of grace and favor from the Lord. And again, of course, our Church New Year begins with the first Sunday of Advent, which will be the last Sunday of November next month. However, we celebrated the feast of one of our more recent saints, Pope St. John Paul II. And I thought I would just reflect a bit about this great saint in our church, a saint with whom we are all familiar, and one of the longest reigning popes in the entire history of the church. But first of all, let me explain why October 22nd was assigned as the feast when we celebrate Pope St. John Paul II's feast as a saint, I should say. October 22nd, 1978 was the day Pope John Paul II celebrated the Mass inaugurating his pontificate. All the popes do this. And we saw it with Pope Benedict XVI. We've seen it with Pope Francis, now Pope Leo. After a man is elected the Pope, perhaps about a week or so later, he celebrates the Mass inaugurating or beginning his pontificate. And so October 22nd was chosen as the day assigned for the celebration of the feast of Pope St. John Paul II. One of the notable things, of course, among so many about the pontificate of Pope John Paul II was the fact that while he wasn't the first pope to travel internationally, in the entire history of the papacy, he traveled more miles and to more countries than any other pope before him or after him. And the one who really opened that opportunity up was Pope St. Paul VI. He was the first pope to actually travel outside of Italy for pastoral visits to other countries. And that just became expected and pretty much the norm. But one of the things that goes along with that kind of traveling was the fact that the talks that he gave wherever he was visiting have been gathered together, and they fill up several volumes. But these are a wealth of Catholic Church teaching, especially coming from the Pope. The Pope's magisterium isn't terribly different from the official magisterium of the church. But when the church refers to a pope's magisterium, it's referring to these specifically individual, personal sermons or talks that a pope gives. The general magisterium of the church has to always, its teachings have to always be approved by the Pope, but in general, they come from one of the dicasteries, whether it's the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, for the causes of saints, for the sacred liturgy and divine worship and the sacraments. These are official teachings that are given by the Church in order to clarify and further explain elements of church doctrine, the moral law of the church, the social doctrine of the church, whatever it may be. So in one sense, they're isn't really any difference in the approval of magisterial teaching, whether it comes from the Pope himself or from one of those Roman dicasteries which the Pope approves in advance of its being published. But the feast, when we celebrate Pope St. John Paul II, is a good reminder to us of what the office of Peter, as the papacy is so often called, what the office of Peter really is. And it goes back to what Jesus himself established for his church with the person of St. Peter, that Peter and all of his successors, their first duty before God and the entire church is to sustain and foster the faith of the rest of us. And when we think about the wonderfully fruitful and long papacy of St. John Paul II, we can certainly see how that lived out and worked out from day to day over the course of almost 25 to 26 years of his papacy. And so we remember Pope St. John Paul II with great affection. We thank God for him, and let us not forget, as a saint, we can ask him to intercede for us before the throne of grace of our Lord for whatever we need personally and whatever the church needs. May God continue to bless you during this beautiful month of October, and let us continue to daily pray for the church and pray for our nation.